Hello and welcome back to the port. I'm Guepratte, and this is a review of the Japanese Tier 4 premium battleship, the Myōgi, which is available for 6,250 doubloons. Now, Myōgi is basically a paper ship. She's the prototype design which would have led towards the Congo class battlecruisers which were built. And she's obviously represented in game with a bit of a fantasy 1930s AA and Superstructure refit, I guess you could say. So she's not quite as per paper design, I guess you could say. Now, this is a tier 4 and 5 game of Capture the Base on the Atlantic on the empty map Farragut of Estrelles, a Bolivian division with a Ranger, a Toronto, a Congo, a New York, Arizona, and New Mexico. So on the left, and we'll do what we can. Now, we're going to go through the stats, and as always, we're going to compare them to the fully upgraded tech tree ships of the same tier, of the same class, and therefore using the tech tree ships as the setting the bar for the tier. So when it comes to survivability, she has the third lowest HP of 45,700, and she also has the third lowest HP pool of 64,852. She does have the best torpedo reduction of 34%. And when it comes to the armor scheme, it's always best to go back to the port and take a look at the armor scheme there. So, back in the port, taking a look at the armor scheme of the Myōgi. Let's start off with the bow. 19mm. Now, this is pretty typical, I guess you could say, for a tier 4 battleship. So, generally, she doesn't really stand below or above the shoulders of anyone else, I guess you could say. And those 19mm are going to offer you some resistance, basically, to I think cruiser caliber shells, I guess you could say. So, it's not that amazing. Really, you're going to be bow tanking is not advised. Now, she does have an icebreaker, which is rather amusing, and what a very armoured lowered bow. I mean, if we take the torpedo protection off, you can kind of see we'll get a better appreciation of the lower armoured bow. But it's so low and so small, it's not really going to be doing too much. So bow and stern, you're going to be taking a lot of pain, I guess you could say. We'll bring the torpedo bulge back on. That gives you an idea of the location of the torpedo bulge, and you can see that it does go quite far forward and reasonably aft as well. And she obviously, we've already kind of mentioned it, she does have the best torpedo reduction for the tier. That's probably another very few feather in her cap, I guess you could say. So obviously that doesn't really do too much in general when it comes to fighting off enemy shells, I guess you can say. Superstructure wise, this is mostly 13mm plating, which means it's harvestable to low caliber HE and AP, I guess you could say, or mostly fires as well. Now, there's not a lot of it. The superstructure up front and aft is very small, I guess you could say, but it is thinly armoured and I guess somewhere where you can harvest. Moving on to the very upper armoured deck. Now, I think this is mostly, I think it's just all focused on this little rear bit, which is underneath X and Y turrets, and that's basically just 90mm all over. It doesn't really add anything, it's just another harvestable area of the ship to anything probably larger than 102mm gun, I guess you could say. Taking that away, I guess we're on to the meat of the meal, I guess you could say. So the upper armoured deck. Your armoured deck is capable of ricocheting 14-inch AP shells, which isn't too bad, and the armoured belt is 152 to 203mm thick, which is basically battleship grade armour. I mean, or cruiser and battleship grade armour. So really, that means that you can kind of angle against anything if you put your minds to it. However, you have to remember that all the blue areas of the ship that we saw earlier are harvestable to incoming shells. Now, when it comes to angling, it's quite awkward. If you kind of bow tank, yes, you do have that kind of angles to the front underneath the bridge. However, you are going to be getting punched in the bow, and that's going to hurt quite a bit, because obviously that's the harvestable area to obviously soak up damage. You could potentially have a turret knocked out, and also you may notice your Citadel low down there is flat fronted, meaning that if anything punches the front of that, it's going to hurt. Now, when it comes to the stern, you have the same kind of situation, and yeah, so it's nothing to get excited about, but I guess it's better than nothing. Taking that away, we start to get an idea of the Citadel and also the turrets and barbettes. Turrets and barbettes, nice thick armour all over, all the way down to the Citadel, nothing to really complain about. Let's take those away because they're mostly subject to RNG. On to the Citadel. Okay, it's quite low. Is the best way to put it. It is at the waterline, so it's not massively exposed. And if we bring this armour back, you can kind of see up front, she does have a bit of a turtle back. It's a very shallow turtle back, however, and so the turtle back, it's not going to be helpful at plunging fire ranges. It might add something at close ranges, but generally it's not the most amazing turtle back. A Citadel is obviously nice and closed in either end underneath the turrets, which does mean that where the turrets are, it's going to be slightly harder to hit, I guess you say. But may notice that there is some very thin plating on the ends, especially on the bulk of the Citadel, which probably contains the engines. And it's closer to the edge, I guess you could say, in the center. Does mean that when you're dive bombing this with AP, you want to be wanting to land it basically on the mid deck between the front and aft bridge if you can. That's going to give you the best results when it comes to Citadels. And generally when trying to pick up the Citadel, I mean, if she gets close, it could be potentially a little bit hard to find at times. However, at range, I think any plunging fire should be able to find it. And also we can take a quick look at the camouflage as well. So it's not a bad camouflage, the typical Type 9 camouflage that comes with premium ships, and each one's obviously unique. In this case, it's quite nice. I'd say it looks reasonably historically accurate, although I haven't done a deep dive into it. Oh well, so that's the Myōgi and all her armour, and that gives you a nice idea overall what she's like. But yeah, she's nothing special. Anyway, back to the game. So, moving on to artillery. She has 6 number 14-inch guns mounted in 3 dual gun turrets. We have a turret up front, and then we have X turret superfired over Y turret at the rear. For the tier, she has a very low gun count, unfortunately. Now, these do offer her the shortest range of 13.1 kilometers, along with an average reload time of 30 seconds. Good news is they do have a fast turret traverse speed, actually the fastest for the tier, doing a 180 degrees of rotation in 37.5 seconds. Now she does have the joint highest HE shell damage of 5,700, the joint second lowest fire chance of only 25%, along with an average AP shell damage of 10,000. However, we have to kind of take note that she obviously has a very low gun count for her tier. So what this means is when it comes to her DPMs, they're shockingly bad. She has the lowest HE DPM, the lowest fires per minute, and the lowest AP DPM. So she's not really great, I guess you could say. Furthermore, she doesn't have any kind of improvement for her accuracy, unfortunately, and so with that low gun count you are still looking at basically some rather poor performance, I guess you could say, at times. Furthermore, I do find the AP to be a little lackluster, especially against battleships. I find that she ends up with a lot more AP shell shatters than normal. And we've kind of gone over the dispersion, and I have tried a dispersion build, and it just doesn't rein it in enough, because, well, it does, but you have to go really for it, and even if you do, what you find is that your shells just don't hit hard enough to really justify all the sacrifices you have to take. So, moving on to maneuverability, and this is one of the areas where I focused when it came to the ship. So she is the joint fastest for her tier, doing a top speed of 30 knots. She does have the third largest turning circle of 730 meters and the third fastest row shift of 12.3 seconds. And what I've done with my Myōgi is I've gone and stuck a cruiser commander on there, inspired with Bruce Fraser and Guepratte. I've gone all down the speed route, and it's quite nice because she does break 35 knots with a battle booster flag. Concealment wise, she has the largest detectability for the tier at 13.7 kilometers. Now, on the Through the Spyglass post, they did try to say that she was better than the Congo, but what they didn't tell you was that included the permanent camouflage that the ship came with. As soon as you strip the ship back to being naked and you compare it to a naked Congo, the dispersion is pretty bad still. Now, she also has a detectability of 10.9 kilometers by air and 11.8 kilometers by firing in smoke, I guess you say. Now, when it comes to the consumables, there's nothing magic here either, unfortunately. She has also the 3 number of repair parties, each repair party capable of repairing 228 HP per second for 28 seconds, meaning that each repair party will yield you a return of 6,384 HP, and also this has an 80-second reload. Kind of noting that the base is not in a good position, and this is probably where having that speed build will maybe be of help, I guess you could say. So we are going to line it up to head back towards the base. Now, as for the damage control party, again, this is pretty standard stuff. 10-second duration and an 80-second reload. Last but not least, she has a third module consumable slot, which she can pick one of the following 3 consumables. She can have catapult fighter, spotter aircraft, or enhanced secondary battery targeting. Now, I've gone for the spotter aircraft just every now and then, just to try and rein in that really trolly dispersion, I guess you could say. However, with all these consumables, you do get 3 number of them, and they're all pretty standard, as best we put it. There's no real difference in comparison to the other ships. Now, although she's a premium, she only comes with a single module slot, and this module slot doesn't contain anything special in comparison to the tech tree ships. And in this instance, I've taken Aiming Systems Module 1 just to try and help with that trolley dispersion. Now, Myōgi is definitely the ship to hate. There's nothing special about this ship. In fact, I'd stand corrected. There is one thing special about this ship. And the special thing about this ship is how bad it is, I guess you could say. The armour means that she can't really resist much. Her HP means that she dies very quickly. Her artillery is lackluster. There's not enough shells going down range to really yield you decent returns. The quantity of those shells at time is rather questionable. Furthermore, I guess you could say it's the low gun count as well is not amazing. I mean, the only advantage I can think of with these guns is they do have slightly advantageous angles towards the rear, which isn't really a feather to hold in your cap, I guess you could say. Maneuverability, okay, she's fast. She's not the fastest, but she's fast, and that does mean you can kind of do a kind of battle cruiser build. That's what I've done here. The aim is I've just gone, well, if I want to run away, I want to do it as quickly as possible because I'll just die. When it comes to the consumables, they're not that amazing. There's nothing standing out. When it comes to the modules, again, nothing amazing, nothing stands out. And when it comes to the concealment, it's pretty poor. And considering she has the largest detectability and the shortest gun range, there's not a lot of wiggle room left over there. Now, obviously, like I kind of said, with the commander build, I have gone for a speed build. The reason being is it tries to take advantage of the only thing she's reasonably good at, I guess you could say. And my hope is that I can kind of relocate this ship as quickly as possible. And I like that. Against the broadside Arizona, I get 2 shatters, 1 over pen and a bounce, and he's not even angled. It does make you question sometimes the capabilities of these shells. Because even when you can make them count, they just don't count, is the best way to put it. They don't really yield you that much damage. It's aiming quite low on the Arizona, but you can see the dispersion. And I end up with most of them falling short of the target and 1 going over, so it kind of feels quite bad. because even at the, like, we're at like 8 kilometers, sub 8 kilometers range. Usually that should be like the sweet spot sometimes with certain ships, and it's just not yielding any form of results. We'll try again. Lead the target, hope for the best. Okay, we managed to get 1 pen, 1 shatter, 1 over pen. We'll see if we can go in against the New Mexico, and maybe then see if I can catch the carrier off guard, I should say, maybe. But I am going to have to just watch out for the destroyer. So there we go. 1 pen, 2 shatters, and 1 over pen. And we're in basically a position where we're going to end up in a world of pain. The reason being is the armour scheme isn't that amazing. Unless the enemy decide that they're going to fire HE at you. Right, we're sub 1 kilometer range. And still 3 shatters. So it just doesn't yield the kind of results that I'd like out of AP. We're now going to focus on the carrier, I think. So we'll try and get the secondary battery to focus. There we go. Now, one nice thing about her, I guess you could say, is the very fast turret traverse speed does give her some kind of advantage at close range, I guess you could say. That's a very small feather to put in her cap, I guess you could say. Maybe getting some hits along the length of the ship might help. Nice. And there we go, unfortunately. So, yeah, even with her improved AA capability, I haven't really noticed any kind of impressive abilities coming out of her anti-aircraft, I guess you could say. Well, obviously as a premium ship she does come with the permanent camouflage, which doesn't look too bad, and obviously does save you on paint, I guess you could say. This is basically the equivalent to a Type 4 camouflage, so it's a Type 9, so it's basically the same as a Type 4, which is a reduction in detectability by sea and an increase in incoming dispersion. Hopefully this game should work out as a win. I mean, we have a destroyer at point blank range against a very low HP New Mexico, and there she goes. But generally, I would say she should have been a tier 3, is the best way to put it. You got to think she's the kind of like the predecessor, the prototype towards the Congo, and she's at the same tier as the Congo. So that means generally the Congo just works out to be better in every regard. They've given the Myōgi absolutely no feather in her cap. Ideally, if they wanted to make her a tier 4, she should have definitely had a vastly improved accuracy to make those shells count, almost like a Yubari style, I guess you could say. And if not, maybe at least give her the options, maybe give her enough module slots to justify it, you know, like some of those lower tier 3 battleships which have like 4 module slots. Maybe give the Myōgi 4 module slots, allow her to have artillery plotting rooms and things like that. But generally she's a rather lackluster addition to the game, and she's actually been the ship that kind of broke my spirit to review, because it just was a pain to review. It's a pain to play. It's not been fun, and it's kind of put me off reviewing ships for a good while. I mean, there must be a reason why there's no damage record for the Myōgi on Discord or on the World of Warships Legends Commanders web page, I guess you could say, and the reason being is no one really likes to play her, I guess you could say, and generally she has no redeeming qualities apart from speed and turret traverse, and that's about it. Somehow, I managed to pull second out of the bag on that one, and I think generally I just got lucky. I was bottom tier in this game, which is genuinely a position that the Myōgi does not like. The reason being is she's really an up tier 3 ship, I guess you could say. She likes being top tier, but even then that can kind of still be a bit painful because you are coming up against other tier 4s. American battleships really hurt the Myōgi just due to the amount of guns they can bring to bear on her. So yeah, she's not the greatest, but you know, pulling second on the winning team as a bottom tier ship, you know, on a live review as well, I'm not going to complain. Economy wise, walking away with a total profit of 148,000 credits, following a ship service cost of 19,320 credits. So she's made some credits, but she has no special credit earning potential, so her replayability is going to be very low, I guess you could say. She really is a ship probably for the collectors and nothing else, and generally I would say steer clear of her unless you can get her for a substantial reduction in price or for free, I guess you could say. Well, I hope you did enjoy this review, and I eventually finally got round to it. If you want, the modules and the command build will be down in the description if you want to refer to them later. Also down in the description is the link to Patreon if you want to support the channel on Patreon, because it is basically it's a non-monetized channel. There's no adverts ever. And also, as a patron, you will have your lovely name appearing on the end of the end screen of any premium ship being reviewed. So in this case, all the patrons, your lovely names will be appearing on the end screen. Well, until next time, I'm the Guy from Major, and back to the ball.
Hey, hey, clear the way, here comes the galloping Major. Bumpity, 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 bump. Get out of the way there, you fellows, unless you want me to run you down. I guess this is the life. Now, hey, hey, clear the way, here comes the galloping Major.